Like I put myself out there all the time. I fall flat on my face.
I love
There's
that.
always somebody that has something else to say about it or whatever. But like Brene Brown says in her book, like you don't get to say anything about me when I'm in the arena and
Yeah.
you're on the stands.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Christina Rahm, and I am here with Dr. Tiffany Moon. Hi, Tiffany. How are you? Or Dr. Moon, how are
Hi.
you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So you're in Dallas, you said.
Yep.
Tell me, you were telling me a little bit before we started the podcast, and I kind of cut it off because I want our audience to hear all about you because you have a beautiful book we're going to talk about. You have a beautiful mission as a person from China that's an immigrant with your family. And by the way, I have spent quite a bit of time in China. So working with your government and working on different projects in the past and really loved being in that country. I even lost my passport in China at one point, and they were very good helping me get back to the United States. But tell me a little bit about you being raised and what happened in the transition coming to the United States with your parents and what that was like.
Yeah, so I'm a child of the 80s, and my parents came to America on student visas and left me in the care of my grandparents when I was 3 years old. And then when they finished school and I was 6, they decided to send for me. So I got put on a plane by myself while being supervised by a flight attendant. And I went from Beijing to JFK,
Were you
landed in there.
excited? I
No,
have
I
to
was scared shitless. I
tell
was
me how
scared
you felt
shitless.
because I can't imagine.
Yeah, my grandma, was like my one and only friend in China. And they like ripped me out of her arms, screaming,
Wow.
crying, kicking. And I was like, I don't want to go to America. I don't want to go, because I was like 6 years old. And my parents, I had not seen them since I was 3 years old. So I don't know these people. This was
Right.
in the 80s. Like there was no FaceTime. There was no, they barely even called. I remember on a phone, I had to buy a calling card and then you would call like a 1-800 number and then put in like some digits of however many minutes you had bought a calling card for. And
Yeah.
then, they'd be like, hi, this is mommy. And I'd be like, hi, mommy, how are you? But they were like abstract concepts. So
Yeah.
6 years old, I land in America in Queens, New York. I do not know what the hell is going on. They put me in first grade, like halfway through the school year. I did not speak English. It was so traumatic. I got made fun of. I was physically bullied, like pushed around. One boy thought it would be funny to cut my hair. I had like long, jet black, straight hair. He came up with a pair of scissors and just went psh, and cut like a chunk off because one of the other boys like dared him to, and then they laughed about it. So I was walking around like with the crazy haircut. We were
Yeah.
so poor when I got home. Like my mom didn't even take me to like a salon. She just finished the job by, going where he had gone and finishing it across. I had a very interesting childhood. I didn't have a lot. We were very poor. We moved all the time. I went to 3 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 3 high schools. So when we
Wow.
moved like every year and a half, it was ridiculous. So
What
I
did
never
they do? What did your
found
parents do for a
my
living?
dad does IT.
Okay.
They basically both do IT.
Okay.
So they would move around like every time they got a better job offer, for like a few $1,000s more salary or whatever, they would jump to another company and our family would move. So we just always, and they didn't take into consideration the fact that, it's really hard when you're a child in the middle of a school year to just pluck up and move. So I sort of, became not a loner. I mean, I had friends and I'm a sociable person, but I kind of never knew when we would move again. And so I didn't have these like long-standing relationships with friends at
Yeah.
school because I knew sooner or later we'd move.
Yeah.
So it caused a lot of trauma in that way. And I was just talking to my friend about a concept in the book about how I'm such a control freak. I write about that. And I was telling her that I think a lot of why I'm a control freak now is because as a child, I had no control over my life whatsoever. And then you go the other way when you become an adult. And, of course, I chose to go into a career in anesthesia, which is like every control freak's, dream come true.
Yeah, yeah, you're
So
right, because it has to be
it
so precise. Yeah,
exactly. And I
yeah,
control everything and it's so precise and
yeah.
I love it. But it's just so funny how some of our childhood events inform our adult decisions, whether or not we see it or not.
Right, right. Well, but I have to tell you your story. I love that because it's inspiring to people. I just started working on an event which is about aspiring women and inspiring women and about how we all need to empower each other because there has been a lot of trauma in a lot of lives. And women, a lot of times, will vary that, right? Because you want to be like the perfect person, you want to act okay, you have to listen. And I know, I hate to categorize between men and women, but it's true. It's a lot, right? And so I think when you see accomplished women, I have to be honest, most of them have been through trauma. They've been through almost PTSD where they've learned to survive it, right, and overcome it. But it's a process. And I do not have a story anything like yours, but I think I'm probably a control freak for the same reason. I have had things and obstacles I've had to deal with. And so in order to succeed or be okay, I've had to develop a method. And I used to be a psychologist. And so I would work with women all the time that had gone through a lot of challenges. And I would tell them, this is something women need to talk about more because we try to not talk about the things we've gone through. We don't want to embarrass our parents. We don't want to upset our siblings or our grandparents or anyone, right? Because we're trying to make everyone happy. So I love this story because you're telling just true feelings of what you went through, which really, when you take a child, I'm sure you know this, out of an environment that they know and rip them out, that is very traumatic. Like it's, it doesn't matter if you know a person's name, but if you haven't seen them, like you said, it's an abstract, right, at the time. So I guess one of my questions to you as being a former psychologist is how did you heal that relationship with your parents?
To be quite honest, I'm not sure that relationship is healed. It's still prickly. I love my parents. I always say, like, if they needed anything, if they needed a kidney, I would give one to them immediately. I bought them a house. I bought them a car. I've done all the good girl daughter things. But it's still a little prickly. I have this innate sense that my father, more than my mother, never loved me unconditionally. His love was definitely with condition, meaning I needed to make straight A's. I needed to be the good girl in church. I needed to be quiet, look pretty, and not speak unless spoken to. Um, as a child, I was only ever praised for being smart or obedient. I
Yeah.
never remember being praised for being kind or curious or creative or any of those things. It was always like, oh, I got 100 on my math test. Like, oh, good girl. My mom would cook dinner. I'd kind of be at her side doing homework and stuff. And then after dinner, my dad would go and sit on the couch with his newspaper, and I would help my mom clean up the table and wash dishes and put the leftovers into Tupperwares and things like that. And that's kind of like how I saw myself through my dad's eyes, like that if I didn't achieve things or do things that were useful to him, that I was not of use to him. And I've never recovered from that. Even to this day, my relationship with my father is very transactional. I buy him things. He says thank you. He helps me watch my girls when I'm out of town. Him and my mom will come stay at my house when my husband and I have a trip or something. But like we never sit down and have these heart to hearts about like what his childhood was like or what it must have been like when he came to America in his, late 20s, early 30s. And I don't know, there's like something missing there that I wish I could be close to my parents, but I'm just not.
Oh yeah. I think it is hard to go through a traumatic experience. And I also think my parents were hard on me. I had to make straight A's. I had to, but my mom was a musician and my dad was he was liberal. They did praise me for creativity. I didn't need to make the straight A's, right? But if I did something kind or creative, and that just kind of struck me when you said that. Because when kindness is so important, right, to life. And if I think we're inherently born to be kind in certain ways, and it's something that makes you feel good when you do a kind act. But if you're not recognized by your parents for that, then you even hide your kind acts. Do you know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
it's not
I
like a
do.
straight A, right? Like that straight A is more important. But you've moved on, and I've read some of the excerpts from your book and things you're saying, and you've brought joy into your life regardless of what you've gone through. You used your weakness that you went through as a child or how you were treated to create a strength as an adult so that your kids can see it. And I have to say this, I admire that so much. My mother had a relationship with her mother, which was similar. It was just she had to be perfect, right? And so she kind of, I think the one part of me, because we all as children have some trauma, right? But my parents always sat down and explained things to me. So at this point in my life, I understand my dad went to Vietnam, right? And he had to fight in the war and he hated it. He didn't want to go to war. My parents didn't believe in war, right? So they almost moved to Canada because they just didn't want to go. Then it caused stress, right, for him. And then my mom had us. I was born while he was in Vietnam. And so it was a different strained relationship. But because we talked through it, that piece was so important. And I feel like just reading the different things about you and starting to learn about you, you took that piece, but you're sharing your story. You're communicating, and you're making that a different life for your children so that they don't have to guess as to why did mom end up this way or how did she get to where she is? Because as parents, we're not perfect. Like I look back, I had 4 children, they're adults. I look at how I could have done things differently. I was working all the time, right? But I kind of, I'm different than a lot of women from America. I've traveled to 92 countries. I've worked all over. So in my mind, I was a different mother. I worked. I didn't stay home. I wasn't against stay-at-home mothers at all, but I had a much different, career. I was traveling all over the world, working for pharmaceutical biotech agencies, and then ran hospital systems as a CEO, did lots of different things in the healthcare system. And for me, I've kind of stopped apologizing and started explaining more. So I love the path you're on to really, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, you're healing part of the past for your children because we have generational things that we go through, right? Like generational ties. And if you don't break that tie, then your children are never okay. Right. So one of the things I think is so interesting and magical about you is you went on to have a very good career, to have a family, and to even start expressing yourself so you can help others and mentor them. So hopefully they don't go through some of the things you've gone through.
Yes, exactly.
So share with me your number one tip of how to go through a traumatic situation and become stronger because of it.
I mean, I don't know if this is the best tip, but I always just say, like, do things that no one can take away from you. Like you're going through a traumatic situation, but for me, like I knew that if I got my medical degree, that would take me far. And I never let my trauma and my immediate circumstances detract me from the goal. But in going to that goal, I also lost sight of a lot of things. There was a lot of misconnections, a lot of, social things that I said no to because I was so singularly focused on being academically gifted and making sure that I graduated at the top of my class that I missed out on a lot of special moments. Like I don't really have a robust college experience that I can tell you about. I spent most of it in the library. It's quite sad actually. But I didn't know any way else back then. I thought
Yeah.
that was my singular focus.
Right. Did that change in medical school? How were you able to develop close friendships when that was the beginning of your life? Do you know what I mean? Because your heart was broken, and I hate to, but like when you have a child and you're fragmenting or taking them out of situations where they're comfortable repetitively, they have a hard time forming these connections in life,
Yes, I
right?
had a lot of hard time forming connections. I had a general distrust of people. I also had abandonment issues. And so even when I started dating, like my first boyfriend when I was 16, which wasn't even serious, anytime he wasn't there for me or didn't answer the phone or something, I'd be like, oh my God, he's leaving me. Or, I had this deep sense of like, worthlessness and shame, and I just thought that, oh, he's going to leave me for someone else, and I was just so paranoid, and I don't know why. Like, he gave me no reason to believe that. Well, until he cheated on me. So,
I was going to
maybe I,
say, well, that was,
but,
it
but you
may
know
have
what
been
I mean? Like,
intuition. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe I drove him away because I was acting crazy. I don't know. But it's so weird. And I had so much trouble. And even now, as someone in my 40s, I still have a hard time making deep, meaningful connections with people because I've just been hurt so many times, like used by people. And even when I was on The Real Housewives, I so naively thought that I was going on that show and it was going to be all fun and that I was going to make these new sassy girlfriends and we were going to have like insider jokes and like stay up all night drinking wine and whatever. I was so naive. I thought these women were my friends. Then when the show airs, like 4 or 5 months later after you've taped it, so now you're like reliving something that happened months ago. And I would hear the things that they would say in their confessionals or how they would act. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Like these women are definitely not my friends, nor did they ever see me as their friend. And it was just so embarrassing. So now I'm just sort of like, I stick to my close inner circle. My two
Yeah.
best friends are from medical school. Um, and when I started medical school, I was 19 years old. So I kind of say I didn't have a robust college experience. But then again, when I was in college, I was 15 to 19. And then in medical school, I was 19 to 23. So basically, I feel like my medical school was my college, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I
100%.
had so much fun in medical school. People are like, you did? I'm like, medical school was the time of my life. They're like, oh my God, I think something's wrong with this chick. But no, I had so much fun in medical school. My best friend was my roommate. We had a third person. We were always together. We went to happy hours. We studied together. Like they're my best friends to this very day.
I have to tell you something because this is so I usually so when we do podcast, we want people that have really dynamic lives, right? Because you want people that have done something with their life to send a message to other people. I knew so much about you because of Stephanie, my assistant. I didn't realize you were on the Housewives
Oh, that's
until right
okay.
now.
I
No,
usually
because
don't
I
lead with
focused so
that.
much on your life. I was so fascinated with she showed it to me, so I speed read, so I'm reading through everything, and I was so fascinated with you being from China because of my experiences in China, and then the immigration story and how you came here was so fascinating to me. And instantly I thought, how did she get through that as a kid? Like just understanding the pain, because as a psychologist, I worked with children and with adults, right? So I understand that those first 12 years, especially first 6 years, are so integral, right, to the success of a person and to the psyche, right? And so I ended up getting into science later in my life, focused mostly on psychology. And they say people that go into psychology have the most problems. So maybe that's why I did. I don't know. But
They say people who go into psychiatry, half of them do it to heal themselves. And I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, yeah,
Yeah, and I had a master's and a doctorate degree and an
right.
undergrad. So I was obviously trying to work through things, even though I do feel very thankful about my life. It had trauma as well, right? We all have had it. But I think it's fascinating that you're an anesthesiologist. You came here and made it through a transition, which is almost impossible for most people. I would say, due to your intelligence and your ability to understand situations that aren't communicating correctly to others, you were able to transcend that. And as a nanobiotechnology, like my postdoc was focused on bioscience engineering and nanobiotechnology. And I learned that the cells between people talk. And there's
Hmm.
some peoples who have cells and the emotional IQ and the ability, even if they don't communicate it, to transcend a situation. And usually those people are outliers, right?
Yeah.
They're extremely smart. They figure it out inside of them, they unlock a key. It's kind of like you unlock a epigenetic, and they're able to figure out the sequencing. And I feel like you did that. You overcame, and then you transcended. And when I'm hearing that you were on, I don't see you as someone really on the Housewives. Not that I'm
I
against.
know.
No, not at
They,
all.
atypical housewife for sure.
Atypical, but I think it's great that you are on the show, and let me tell you why. I think it's great for younger women or any women to see strong individuals that have a story where they've done something to transcend a bad situation. Because so many times in life, you can either decide to just pull your, covers over your head and just stay home, or you decide to get up and keep going. And you obviously have done that. So I love that you were on the Housewives, because I think that gives people an example of how to act as a female. And I know the pain that comes from women betraying each other. It's hard, right? I have some very few close friends. And then I have people like all of us that have betrayed me as well. And that's a hard part of life. And I think if we could take a message from that, it would be to, let's stop doing this. Let's try to all get along, right? Let's all try to figure out a way. Because with men, they go play sports and they're good, right? Or
Yeah,
they get in a fight and then it's over. But with
right.
women, it's a much different path. And I think that's what's led me to do a lot of stuff with the Republicans and the Democrats for female empowerment, and to work together towards these situations with governments to try to heal some of the things that are going on. Because I had a unique experience working in Russia, working in China, working in the United States, working in all these different environments, where I would hear people in the United States talking bad about China, or people in the United States talking about Russia. And what I understood from that is all the countries are different. You've got good and bad people in each place, but what you've got to do is try to understand each other. Taking that information from global travel for a career has helped me even with my friendships in the United States, because now when I look at women, when they say something or do something to me, in my mind, I think they just don't understand, or they're scared, right? Or they're ignorant, like they just don't understand. And that's what I have taken from the global travel, is trying to understand even people where I am every day, because so many women spend their day with gossip or chaos or trying to hurt each other, instead of trying to really do what we're made to do, which is to make humanity better. And I see you as someone that you're making humanity better. And by hitting that creativity with the Housewives and being on television, just so you know, not that you need my opinion, but I think it's fantastic that you did that. I really do, because it shows
Yeah.
that you were willing to step out and take a chance,
Yeah.
even though you may never do it again.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, when you're open to new opportunities, life just throws things at you. I did not have it on my bingo card that I was going to be a real housewife one day. Like, that was not something I aspired to, but the opportunity landed in my lap, and I said, hey, why the hell not? It's not every day that Bravo TV comes knocking on your door.
Yeah,
And I'm so grateful that I was given that opportunity, because it allowed me to grow in so many ways that just, being a doctor and a mom would have never allowed. And it grew my
100%.
platform. So, I'm grateful for it. But yeah, it's not really my cup of tea.
What's on your radar now? Like, what are your goals
Well,
in the next 10 years?
oh gosh, I started running a women's leadership and empowerment conference, LeadHer Summit. We had our first one in November of 24. We're going to be having it again November of this year. It's really what I want to be doing, like you're saying, like uplifting women, empowering them. I have amazing speakers that come and share their stories, and it's just a lot of like beautiful networking, community building. It's a really fun conference. So I'm getting that off the ground. We also have a retreat. The first one was in Cabo. I'm looking for where we should host the second one. I'm excited about the book launch. I've been doing a lot more speaking. I used to be deathly scared of public speaking, like voice trembling, like just bad. And the only things I ever did the first 10 years of my career was like medical conferences, so I'd go to our annual anesthesia conference and talk about like novel anesthetic
Yeah.
techniques or things like that, and they were all like PowerPoints with lots of charts, lots of words. And then I remember maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago, I got invited to give the commencement address at the local community college here. And then I got invited to a charity gig and a women's conference. And I'm like, what do you guys want me to talk about? And they're like, your life, like being a leader in a male dominated field, like, whatever you want. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't possibly do that. I remember the first time before I went on stage, I had a shot of vodka because I was so nervous. I'm not advertising drinking.
We're
Um,
gonna, we're gonna highlight that in the podcast.
yeah,
I'm
please,
teasing.
please don't. Dr. Tiffany Moon recommends taking shots before public speaking. No, that is not what I said. But I was just so nervous. And it's so funny now that I've become like a seasoned motivational speaker or what have you. I just was a keynote for the Mom 2.0 conference in Orlando last week, and Brene Brown was the other keynote. And I was like, did these conference organizers like mess something up? Or maybe they spent all their money on Brene because I know she has like a very hefty speaking tag. And then they had very little budget, and they're like, "Who can we get for this much?" Like, "Oh, let's try Tiffany Moon." Um, but it's just
I don't
crazy. I
think
think
so.
the
No.
point that I'm trying to make is that be open to life's opportunities, like Real Housewives speaking. I did stand-up comedy. Be willing to make a fool out of yourself. And I always say, like, I'll be the first to laugh at myself. So you can't even laugh at me. You're gonna have to laugh with me because I'm in on the joke. Like, you know what I mean? I don't
I
think that I'm
like that
so
a lot.
perfect that
Yeah.
I don't make mistakes, or, oh, that's so embarrassing. That's so cringe, as the kids would say. Like, I put myself out there all the time. I fall flat on my face.
I love
There's
that.
always somebody that has something else to say about it or whatever. But like Brene Brown says in her book, like, you don't get to say anything about me when I'm in the arena and
Yeah.
you're on the stands.
Yeah. How true is that? How true
Yeah.
is Yeah, I love that message and I want everyone to hear that. I love that you're not letting people laugh at you. They can laugh with you. I say it all the time to people when I do different leadership conferences. I think one of the keys to being a great female leader is and a male leader. Like I just think admitting your flaws and weaknesses and building teams, because I've built businesses throughout my career. And I think building teams, you got to do it by finding the weaknesses of everyone and the strengths and working together. But when you make
Yes.
fun of people or gossip, for me, it's not okay. It doesn't end up working out okay. So you really got to figure out a way to find the best in people and then utilize the assets. But if there's people in an organization or in a friend group or anywhere that are making fun of others, I always gravitate away from them. I always have. Because I don't feel like in the end that's a successful endeavor. And I think I must be a little egotistical. I want everything to be successful. I always say I want to live up. I don't want to live down. I don't want my life to get worse as I get older. I want it to continue to be a light and to serve and lead at the same time. But through all this in the back of my head, I have to ask a question that I keep thinking. What did your parents think when you were on The Real Housewives?
Oh, girl. First of
Because
all,
my
I did
parents
not
would have died.
I did not tell them. We filmed during COVID, so it was kind of easy to hide. I did not tell them until like the very end of filming because they wanted my mom to come over and film a scene with me. So I called her and I was like, "Mom, I'm doing this little TV show. Like, can you come over?" And she was like, "What TV show?" I was like, "Oh, it's not important. Like, they'll just mic you up, pretend like you don't see the guy in the living room holding the huge camera." So she came over. But when the show aired, I guess some of my parents, friends, kids watched the show and then like said something about it. So my dad was kind of upset because he felt that I had portrayed my mom poorly on the show, which is not what happened. It's like they take something and twist it a little bit. I
Yeah.
just said that as a child, my mom wasn't really there for me. That's not an exaggeration. She worked a lot and we moved all the time. The producers asked me to describe my childhood, and I said it was lonely. My parents were never around. I was an only child. My brother was born when I was 11, but then I moved out of my parents' house when I was 15 to go to college. I moved into a dorm when I was 15 years old, never to return to their house ever again.
Wow.
Yeah, and so the way it was shown on TV, I guess, gave people the perception that she wasn't a good mom, which I never said. And my parents were upset about it. So, I mean, they're over it now. But yeah, my dad called me and bitched me out for sure.
Yeah, I've had to deal with similar situations. I love my parents. They've been together since they were 14,
Oh my
and
God.
they're 80, I think 84 and 85 or 83 and 84, something like that. And they're wonderful. But like there was a Forbes article about me that said that I grew up on a plantation. And that really upset my parents. I never said I grew up on a plantation, right?
Right.
Like I grew up on a farm. It was a pretty big farm. We had different people that worked the farm, but they felt like that sent the message, and it actually was released in Monaco in Europe. And so they felt like I gave the audience or people the perception that we were slave owners.
Right.
and,
Right.
and and they were like, plantation means you, and they were very upset about it. And I,
As they should be.
as they should be. And my mom was crying. And I understand why I was upset too, but you can't retract what the media puts out. Like there's nothing you can do. And
Right.
because when I said farm, they probably thought that that word was a better word, plantation in Forbes or in, who knows why? I don't know why. But that sticking point, and that's why I ask about your parents. I'm always worried about what I say because I feel like I don't want to ever say anything that would hurt them, but I also want to be honest and insightful and truthful. And they taught me to be that way. But I understand that's why when I asked you about it, I thought that had to be hard for her with her parents because I can't even imagine having that conversation.
Yeah, they were not pleased with the whole Housewives bit, but they got over it.
Are they proud of you for being an anesthesiologist?
My dad would probably rather have me be like a neurosurgeon or plastic
Yeah.
surgeon. Like it's never good enough for him. He kind of doesn't understand what I do. Not too long ago, he was like, "So you put people to sleep all day?" And I was like, "Yes." And then he was like, "And then what?" And I was like, "And then I make sure that their blood pressure and heart rate and oxygenation are good. I transfuse blood. I give pain medications." Like, do you think it's just magic that like you have an entire surgery, like a hip replacement, and then you wake up magically in the recovery room and you feel decent? Like that's the work of me. And he's
Have
like,
him call me because I'll tell him it's one of the most important. No, I'm serious because I used to do surgical care centers and interoperative monitoring. We had it throughout the United States, even in Johns Hopkins and everything. And I was the CEO. And I got to tell you, the most important job there and the person in that room was the anesthesiologist. So it may
yes,
seem simple to people, but it's actually one of the most integral and important parts that's imperative to the success of any surgery or treatment for a patient. So he can
yes.
call me.
Please try to have a surgery without an anesthesiologist. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're not like I always tell my medical students that come to me for mentorship and guidance, and they ask me like what specialty they should go into. And I'm like, I love anesthesia. I mean, if you're a control freak, if you like to be precise, if you like to work with your hands. But I say, if you're one of those people that always needs people to give you a pat on the back and tell you what a good job you did, then don't go into anesthesia
Yeah, you're
because
right.
the surgeon generally gets all the credit, right? Because they're the one that does the surgery. And of course, they're very important. I love my surgical colleagues, but like no one ever remembers anesthesia. Even my friends, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm having this or I'm having a laminectomy." And I'm like, "Who did your anesthesia?" 9 times out of 10, people are like, "I don't know. It was this guy. He had brown hair." Like we're kind of a necessity in terms of the surgery, but like frequently forgotten. And I think that's probably good. Like
But
if
you
my
know the
patients don't
statistics on
remember
that.
my name, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know the statistics on that. If you don't have a good anesthesiologist,
Oh, there's a lot of bad anesthesiologists out there, and I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but there's bad doctors out there, and there's bad anesthesiologists, there's bad surgeons. I mean, there's bad everyone, but like there's a lot of anesthesiologists that are out there harming people. I see it. And it's
that's why
it's
it's so important to have a good
scary.
one like you. I'm being
Yes.
honest. Like it's so
Yes.
imperative to the success. So it's interesting. I've had a number of surgeries in my life because I've had cancer and different issues, and it's the first thing I ask because I want to
No.
know that that person is good. Because if they're not, you're right. It impacts. I mean, you may not wake up. Right. I'm just
Right.
going to say that. Like,
Right.
I don't. And so I learned that because my father actually worked and ran a hospital system, and he worked with special needs kids. And when you have Down syndrome, you know all this, and they go
Hmm.
under surgery.
They're difficult
He
airways. Yep.
managed all the doctors and nurses at those hospitals, and it was he taught me that it was the most integral part of
Yeah.
that whole surgery, because if they don't do their job right, if they give too much, then if that or they don't give enough, then that is one of your biggest issues in that whole surgical procedure.
Yep. Yep.
So I'm proud of you for doing it. Not that you need my approval, but I just want to tell
Oh,
you as a female, and as a woman that has 4 children and they've had surgeries, I've had surgeries. It's great to know that you're really good and you care about what you do. And
I do. I take great pride in my work.
I think that's amazing. And I hope everybody knows that has you as a doctor, because I'm sure people do ask when they see your name, they're like, wait, is that Dr. Moon from the
Row
Real House?
House, I
Yeah.
know. It's so embarrassing. Yeah, most of
Does
my
that
patients,
happen?
it happens very infrequently because I work at Dallas's county hospital. So, like,
Yeah.
half of my patients don't speak English. They might be undocumented. We also have a lot of prison patients. So, if a prison fight breaks out, those patients now come over to my hospital to get their noses and jaws put back together. So like it's not really like the Bravo TV watching demographic, but
Right.
I have occasionally been recognized. But also, I have a mask on and like a hat covering all my hair. So even if they're like a little bit like, is that, isn't it? I don't think they say anything. Yeah. And then I just inject the propofol and I'm like, go to sleep.
Go out. Yeah.
Quit talking, quit talking.
What about your daughters? How old are they?
They're 10 now.
They're
Yes.
twins.
They're twins, yes. I struggled with infertility, which I talk about in the book. I had a miscarriage, which was, very sad. And then we finally got pregnant with twins, and now they're 10.
So what do they think about their mother and what she does? What are they, when someone asks them, do they understand what you do? Because you do a lot.
I don't think so. Like, I don't think they think I'm a big deal. Um, Sometimes we'll be at the airport, trying to go on spring break or something, and someone will come up at the airport and be like, "Are you Tiffany Moon?" And I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "Oh my God, I love you." They'll either say, "I love you" on Real Housewives, or they say, "I follow you on Instagram or TikTok and I love your videos." It's generally
Yeah.
one of those two things. And they'll be like, "Can we take a selfie?" And then my kids are always like rolling their eyes and stuff
Yeah.
because they don't understand why anyone on earth would like want to
Yeah.
take a picture. Now I can barely get them to be in a picture with me. I'm like,
Oh,
girls,
yeah.
smile. And they're like, oh, mom, stop. They're in that kind of age, right? Where
Yeah.
they're like too
Oh,
cool
yeah.
to hang out with mom. Whereas when they were like 4 and 6, we were like best friends and
Yeah.
painted each other's toenails and stuff. So it's interesting, but I want my children to have a normal life. That's why when I was asked to do a spin-off show, when I decided not to do Housewives anymore, they asked me if I was interested in doing a spin-off show that's like about my family. They were very interested in the fact that I was a tiger mom and I ran my kids on like a very strict schedule. But anyway, I talked to my husband about it and we didn't think that was a good idea, because they'd be in our house like all the time and
Yeah.
the kids are young. They can't really make those kind of decisions yet. And then they go to school and their friends see them on TV. Like it's just weird.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I declined that opportunity. But I try to give my children a nice, normal childhood that I never had. They've only gone to one school. They're in fourth grade right now. They started at that school when they were in kindergarten, right? So they know all the people, and I don't plan to move them out of school. It's funny, you want to give your kids the things you didn't have, right?
Yeah.
So I want to
Yeah.
give them stability, like is the main thing, stability and a sense of control, which I lacked immensely. They get to buy new clothes. We go out to eat. They go on vacations. I was telling my kids the other day, I was like, do you know that when mommy was a little girl, mommy never went on vacation? Like
Yeah.
I rode a plane to come from China to America. And then I did not get on another plane until I went to college. Like our family never took a vacation. Although once we did drive from Dallas to San Antonio to see the Alamo and go to SeaWorld. But like I had never been to Disney World or Disneyland. I had never skied. I learned to ski when I was like 35 years old. It was terrible. Looked like, a new donkey, like walking for the first time, like just not coordinated.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and I was telling the girls, and I was like, y'all are so lucky. We go on so many vacations a year and all this stuff. And my girls just kind of looked at me like,
Yeah.
Mom,
Yeah.
like, are you done lecturing us now? Because
Yeah.
they've never known a life in which they had to want for something. I grew up in a land of scarcity, and they grew up in a land of abundance. I had a Pop-Tart and walked myself out of our apartment to go wait on the corner for the bus to take the bus to
Yeah.
school. My
Yeah.
kids get chauffeured to school every morning in a Cadillac. Like, it's just not the same. You know what I
Not
mean?
the
And I
same.
I
No.
want to put in some barriers so that my kids aren't spoiled and they're grateful and they're kind human beings. But it's hard because they go to school with all these other kids that are just so spoiled. They have like iPhones already. I'm like, no, I'm not giving you an iPhone.
But they'll be okay because I was worried about the same thing with my kids because I grew up on a farm in the country. I got to tell you, I kept thinking, I am not raising my kids. I want them to travel. I wanted them to, I didn't go anywhere. Right. And
Right.
so I was like you, and I wanted to give them everything, and we have. And I've been worried too because they went to prep schools, they did different things, but they really, I have to tell you, I've been pleasantly surprised with my kids because they all have good hearts. Like they're not perfect, just like I'm not perfect, but that was my main concern, what yours is. But they'll watch you and your husband, and and
Yes.
and they'll end up amazing because I've seen a mother work really hard. I did one of my dissertations on whether children are better when they are raised in a home where the mother stays home or whether they're better with when the mother works, and did another one
Mm,
and correlated statistically looking at were they divorced or did they stay married, because I was very interested to figure out what are your things. And basically the summary of the whole thesis and dissertation was that if you spend time with your kids, even if you only have 30 minutes to an hour a day, but they see you and they know you love them and they know there's an unconditional part. See, that's the thing that's so important, that they know it's not just a grade, right? It's the
hmm
you want them to be kind. You need them to be
hmm
kind. So the summary was, doesn't matter if you're married or divorced, doesn't matter if you work or don't work. It matters how your kids feel, that you feel about them, because that really supports their ego, their id, their super ego, everything, right? And
Yeah.
plus, you're lucky they're twins, so they have each other. Do you know what I mean? So they have
Yes.
that support, and they've learned from the beginning. I've done so many studies years ago on twins, and they have an ability to learn friendships and to connect because they're born like that, right?
Yeah.
Even if they're arguing all the time, it doesn't matter. They grow through that and they learn. So that's amazing that you have those kids. I have to ask you, tell me a little bit about your husband.
Oh, well, he is a saint, because he puts up with me. He is a lawyer by training, but he actually works more in real estate development. He owns hotels, in the Dallas area, all over Texas, I guess. He's very patient and kind. He was previously married before, so I have stepkids from his previous marriage. And he is just very like reasonable, calm, cool, collected. Like everyone likes my husband because generally, like if you don't like him, you're the problem. Whereas me, I'm more like you either love me or hate me. Like people don't usually be in the middle. Like even when I was on Housewives, the audience reception was either they loved me or they hated me. And I was like, okay, I'm very polarizing. That's cool. And he's just a good person. I don't know how to describe him. He's like the yin to my yang, the calm to my storm.
I don't think you're polarizing. I think you're very smart, and it's probably intimidating to people. I mean, you're beautiful inside and out, and you're smart and you're empowering, and not everyone can handle that, but that's not your issue. Do you know what I mean? Like you really, if people have an issue with that, it's because it's hard. I'm sure it's hard for some women and men to see someone that graduated medical school at that age. I find it empowering and amazing, but I think some people, you're right, would have a hard time with that because they would think, how does someone even do that? I just know for you to do it, you had to be extremely determined extremely smart, and you had to have this gut passion to make you get through things. So I respect that a great deal about what you've done. It's huge. It really is. And I
Yeah.
want to thank you for being on the podcast. I'd love to have you back. I want to tell people though where to find you, where to find your book tour, and how to really learn more about you, because I don't think you're polarizing. I think you're something that if women can look at a woman like you as a mentor or to empower as an example, I think it's needed in this life right now, because we're not looking for women to be weak or gossip or manipulative. We're looking for women to be strong. And sometimes when you're strong, you have an opinion, right? That
Right.
doesn't mean
Right.
you're bad. So I just want to tell the audience that, like, if you disagree with someone on the show or you disagree with me, doesn't mean you're bad. It just means you're strong, you know who you are, and you have an opinion and you utilize that, which is a major quality that I think most women need to have if they don't, because without that quality, you really can't reach the point in life of who you want to be. And whether you want to be an author or an anesthesiologist or be on a television show, you've done it all. But to do any of those, you've got to have that self-worth and that confidence. And if you don't get it from your family, I tell people this all the time, you got to find it in yourself, right? Because none of us have perfect families, but if you can find it in yourself, then you can change the world. And I really do believe that. And you're changing it so your daughters can see it, and you're an example to other younger women and older women in the world of what you can do. Because at any point in your life, if you decide to succeed, you can, but you have to be determined to do it.
Yes, exactly.
So
So well
where do
said.
we find you? How do we follow
Okay.
you? And how
So
do we get our
if
audience to follow you?
Yeah, I'm across all the social media platforms at Tiffany Moon MD. If people are interested in having me speak, you can go to my website, which is tiffanymoonmd.com, and there's a little questionnaire if you want me to speak at an event. The book is called Joy Prescriptions and can be found anywhere books are sold or on the website at joyprescriptions.com.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day. And I hope that you have a wonderful weekend with your family. And I'm just so proud of what you're doing. I think it's an inspiration to so many people. So we hope we will push this out across all of our platforms. We'll even push it out on our different social media to make sure people can see little excerpts of what you're doing, because it's fantastic. So thank you so much.
Amazing. Let me know if you're ever in Dallas or if you want to come to LeadHer Summit. I'd love to have you join us.
Absolutely. And I will keep inviting you. We're doing a thing for Elysium, and we need to find women like you. We're doing Dubai and Saudi Arabia and a fashion show in November. And then we have a Las Vegas event. And when I do fashion shows, because we have a clothing line that protects against environmental triggers and nuclear waste, but we partner with major brands, and we have throughout the years. But I like to use real women to model
Yeah.
instead of just models, because I like to have women on stage. We're talking about their life so we can promote their cause, so we can empower others. So
Oh
it's
my
kind of
God, I love
interesting.
that.
We were
You'll make
yeah.
all my 5'3" runway models' dreams come true.
Well, then
Walking a runway as a 5'3". Yeah.
we
All the
will
models are,
definitely.
yeah. Hit me
Well,
up. I'll gladly run down a runway for you.
okay, well, we always do New York's runway, and we're on the main runway. And then we
Okay.
partner with another designer brand, and we raise money for children and animals. So we
Yeah.
do a lot of stuff, but really it's all about women. So we will keep you in the loop. And if I'm in Dallas, I will reach out if you, and I'll find out more from Stephanie about your event, because I would be interested. And then
Yeah.
please know if you're ever in Nashville, to let us know. We'd love to have you at our house and to go to dinner with you.
That would be lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great Friday and have a good weekend. Bye.
You too. Bye.